that we've created the sales budget, let's talk about the production budget. Production budget estimates production needs for a specific time period. Just like the sales budget, it's time specific, so it's created on a quarter, monthly, or annual basis. It's also driven by the estimated sales budget. What we expect to sell as a firm flows into what our production needs are. There is an inventory focus inside of the production budget. Organizations usually want some inventory on hand at the end of an accounting period. It helps deal with fluctuations, differences from expectations or budgets, etc. And it's also inventory that's saved for a rainy day, just in case next period sales are higher than projected. You'll see this inventory focus in our example. So looking at Hogarth's production budget, we start with expected unit sales. For quarter 1, we expect to sell 3,500 units. For quarter 2, we expect to sell 4,000 units. And quarter 3 and quarter 4 have their projections. This was created in the sales budget in the previous slide. Now, Hogarth has a policy that says that 25% of the next quarter's needs need to be in ending inventory in the preceding quarter. Looking at next quarter's production or sales, we need 25% of 4,000 units, or 1,000 units. That is our desired ending inventory at the end of quarter 1. So taking into account what we expect to sell, as well as the number of units that we need to have in ending inventory, 3,500 plus our 1,000 units is equal to 4,500 units. That is the total required units for this quarter. Now, of course, we began the period, and our ending inventory from the preceding year exists at the beginning of this first quarter of the current year. And that was 875 units, or, according to our policy, 25% of our expected sales in this current quarter. Given that we require 4,500 units, and we already have 875, that tells us that our production needs are 3,625 units. That's what our production plan will be for this first quarter of the year. Rolling forward and taking into account quarter 2, we know that the beginning inventory of quarter 2 is the ending inventory of quarter 1. The items we had on hand at the end of quarter 1, we start with in the beginning of the next quarter. Looking ahead to quarter 3, we know that we are going to sell 3,200 units. According to our policy, we need 25% of those needs on hand at the end of the current quarter. So that leads us to have a desired ending inventory of 800 units. The expected sales of 4,000 units and the desired ending inventory of 800 units mean that we have a total required unit number of 4,800. Given that we're starting with 1,000 units, our required production in quarter 2 is 3,800. Now, the same process can be applied to quarter 3 and quarter 4 to calculate the required production for those periods. And then ultimately, we can sum up the required production in each quarter to figure out what our annual production will be. And that happens to be 15,875 units. So now we're going to turn to the individual components of the production budgets and focus our attention on materials, labor, and overhead costs.